Hey, welcome to the Hoops in the P.N.W. This is our second episode, and I have on with me head coach Joe Marsh from Arlington High School. Selfishly, I am pulling coaches that I have a ton of respect for. I started with Ken because he's been a huge mentor for me since I got hired at Lake Stevens 15 some years ago, and thought it would be appropriate to start with him. And then I thought Joe Marsh, who's from Arlington, would be kind of my next in line because when he took the Arlington job over, and you'll give us some history here in a second. I don't want to date you too much, but when he took over, he's raised that program to a super high level, and something that we look forward to. And I know as a rivalry, I hope you consider I think Lake Stevens a rivalry. Um,
For sure.
something something that we look forward to each and every year, and something that we'll get into. But Joe, thanks for coming on today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm interested in doing it.
Awesome, awesome. Well, before we get started, and I guess I don't know too much about this outside prior, maybe a little bit with the boys program. Go ahead and give us some history with regards to coaching. Were you a player? Those kind of things. Give us some basketball coaching background for yourself.
Coaching background, been coaching at Arlington High School my entire career since I started there. I started in the boys program. I was in that program for 8 years. Did everything besides be the head coach. I was a freshman. I was a volunteer for a couple of seasons. I was a freshman coach, varsity assistant, JV coach. I did all of it. And then, the girls' job opened up 9 years ago. I think it's nine. It's going on 10 now, I guess.
Okay, okay.
And decided to make the move. I had two young daughters at the time, and I wanted to be a head coach, and decided to apply for the job, and I got it. And here we sit.
Awesome. Were you a player back in your day?
Yeah, I loved. Yes, I played. I played at I went graduated from Arlington High School, so
Whoa.
I played at Arlington. Played a couple of years. Played for Larry Walkover, Everett Community College after high school, and then played everywhere I could until I couldn't anymore. Retired a few years ago. The body can't do it anymore. So
Sure, sure.
uh, coaching's where I get my competitive outlet. So
Awesome. Well, it sounds like so you played in the old gym then. You understand the
yes,
big, large beams and that's fantastic. So I was in that gym just a couple of times back in the Caleb Burt years.
yes,
It's probably my only
yeah,
influence of that gym. And man, just so unique. I don't think I've seen anything like it anywhere, at least in our area.
yeah. That yes, that and that's funny. That gym was new right when right before I got to high school.
Okay.
I think so. They had just built it, so it's crazy to think it's old now, and
Yeah.
they've redone it. It's a middle school, but still there.
Awesome. Now, when's the last time you've been there?
I go there. I'm there fairly often. Well, not fairly often. I go in there. When my daughter was playing younger years in the AAU stuff, I was there quite a bit, and now I pop in
Gotcha.
just to see the youth teams play once in a
Gotcha.
while. And I always go watch a middle school game once a year, so I still get
Good.
in there.
Good. 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 Awesome. Well, I don't certainly have that kind of playing history. I think I was always told, maybe this is just me, those that can't play it coach it. So, and I was awful as a player, but I certainly had some good influence. Do you have any influences that kind of helped shape you as a coach? Whether it was through your years as a boys coach or Coach Walker or anything like that that's kind of shaped your maybe philosophy.
Sure, absolutely. Bill Sharp was my high school coach. Kind of a legend, old school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Interesting guy to play. Really old school. It's crazy when you think how much the game has changed. I
Yeah.
was in high school in the early '80s, so I'm dating myself here, but you know, I was pre 3-point line.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Wow.
so so the game was obviously a lot different, and so playing for Coach Sharp, he had a big influence on me. Playing for Larry Walker over at Everett, great guy. Um, I think one of the funny things about Larry is him and I are probably polar opposites when it comes to sideline, the way we coach. But I
Yeah.
think he really did. I told him this when he retired, that he really just opened my eyes to, it doesn't always. People might get a chuckle out of this if they know me, but it doesn't always have to be loud to get your message across. You know what I mean? There's other ways of doing that are effective.
Yes.
He really. So I mean, I took some really great things from him. I just love the way he built his program, and his family was around, and so that was a big influence there. Um, Dan Roush, who was the head coach at Arlington Boys, hired me. I was doing my student teaching. I got into teaching later, and I have a ton of respect for Dan and giving me an opportunity. He just, I
Yeah.
was going to do my student teaching. He said, "Hey, you want to help out?" And I said, "Sure." I was like, obviously, yes.
Right.
And I volunteered for a couple of years, and then he hired me on staff. And I think that I learned a ton from him as far as running a program, how to run a program, how to be the head coach. Just kind of watching what he did. He was a very smart, meticulous guy, the way he ran things. So I got a lot from him. And then, Nick Brown's the current coach.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Roush retired, Nick took that job, and I was his assistant for his first 2 years. So, I think we both learned a ton on the fly there, trying to figure out how to run a program, and me trying to help him as much as I could, and him trying to figure out how to be a head coach. So I think it's like everything you take you know, from what you've been in. And so those guys had a ton of influence on me for sure.
Sure, sure. No, that's fantastic. I think probably is a huge connection to, and I was going to get to this here a little bit later, but promote family in your program. A lot of what you do and what you guys are all about. I think you make mention of it on social media quite a bit, and
Sure.
and certainly through the media, just in general. That shapes kind of what you do and what your program's all about. Is there was that a focus in the boys program too, or is that something that you kind of just carried over with the girls program?
It was definitely a focus. I mean, I was just going to tell you this. I took it from Nick when Nick was head coach. He was a family basketball guy. It was a thing that we used, and it was just seemed like a no brainer for me to take with me when I moved over to the girls' side. I think it's just super important to what we do. I love the concept of it. I come from a big family. I have 6 kids in my family itself, and kind of a big extended family. So
Sure.
I just love the whole idea of it, and we've tried to implement that kind of as a big part of what we do for sure.
Awesome. Now, I asked this of Ken because he coached boys as well, and I always like to open with this. You've coached both. I've coached both, and I get this question asked quite a bit. Do you have a preference? What's the difference? I mean, you can pick sides here if you don't want. You don't have to play the
Sure,
PC card, but
sure.
is there preference, boys or girls? Did you enjoy or have you enjoyed one more over than the other?
Well, I loved coaching in the boys program. Loved coaching boys, and that's where I started. Never really, me leaving boys basketball had nothing to do with the boys basketball. It was just an
Sure, sure.
opportunity for me, and
Right.
having daughters. Um, and I had coached some youth girls a little bit prior to that, but not a whole lot. And so I just kind of walked in the girls doing it the way I coach boys. I didn't really know anything different, and didn't really do much different, to be honest with you. And I got that question, especially early on. Are you going to go back
Right.
to the boys? When are you going to go back to the boys? And I'm straight up with people. I love coaching girls basketball. I just do.
Yeah.
I don't think I can't say never, but
Sure.
I have no desire to leave the girls game. I just enjoy it. There's just something about it that gives me a joy. I still get to compete at a high level. I just love, if girls trust you, and they'll do anything for you.
Yep.
And it's just so I've had a great experience coaching girls. I probably wouldn't go back unless it was,
Yeah.
I don't even know. I couldn't tell you what would make me go back, to be honest with you.
Sure. Sure. No, I think that's one of the things that I talked about with Ken, and anybody that has kind of asked me that same question is I love coaching boys. I was actually up at Burlington for a
Sure.
couple of years in between, and it's one of those things that it was professionally such a good thing for me to get a different experience. And Rick Skeen, who's now the boys coach down at Kings and
Sure.
has done a great run, and so much of what he's done added to what my history was all about. But in terms of kind of the girls side of things, I think the biggest thing is kind of the relationship side of things, with girls. As you talked about, if they trust you, if they feel like you care about them more
Right.
than maybe the other way around, they're going to do anything for you.
Right.
And you've had teams. I've certainly had teams that have probably exceeded their expectations
Sure.
because of that family atmosphere, of that, hey, they believe in you as a coach, and you have their best interests at heart. And when those kind of things happen in your program, that's ultimately what makes this whole coaching thing what it's all about. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I would say too, at least early in my career, I don't know if you could speak to this, but my first year or two, I was really able to concentrate on the relationship side of things because we had a decent talent base of kids. I
Sure.
didn't. I was allowed to make mistakes as a young coach,
Mhm.
but not at the expense of really focusing on the relationship side of things. Did you have that kind of same thing when you made that transition? I mean, what was your first couple of years like in terms of that dynamic?
Well, we had my first year is your first year. You're coming into a new program. I taught at the school, so I knew the kids, a lot of them.
Mm,
And I had a big senior class that year. So it was kind of an interesting first year you know, trying to figure out what you want to do as a coach, what kind of system
sure.
you're going to put in, style play, all those things, trying to make a shift in the culture and, put your
Right.
stamp on all of that. So that first year is kind of we had a decent year. Um, and then my second year, we ended up going to the state championship, which was kind of a crazy year for us where
Yeah.
I knew we had a chance to be good, but I didn't think, I had no clue that it was going to look like that. And a big part of that was the relationships that I had with those kids in that junior class, who I had already known some anyway. And I
Right.
just had some kids who just they just wanted to win. And we had talent and we had size and
Yep.
we managed to put it all together and go on this great run that I don't know that anybody really expected. So that was just a great. And from there on, you just get greedy. I want to keep winning, go into Tacoma and doing all that stuff. It's great for the community. It's great for the program. It's great for youth. So
Yeah.
yeah, so we had a kind of a really nice start to our stint here in Arlington and trying to keep it going from there.
For sure. I think one of the challenges too, or at least for myself, I don't know, maybe if you experienced this, but you had mentioned you'd actually taught in the building.
Right.
In my first couple of years, I was actually still at MP as a teacher,
Sure.
and then traveled up, and that's kind of I think where the relationship side of things for myself was so important because I wasn't on campus. But
Right.
when I made that shift in year three, got a teaching job by chance there. Year three, and we actually took that next leap because I was in the building. I
Yeah,
think that's maybe a huge advantage that you had was that you were in the building. You
for
knew a
sure.
lot of those kids, and it really helps with that dynamic. And as you make transitions from one coach to another, you've got a little bit of a head start, which I think was certainly important for you. Getting started. Would you agree?
Oh, no doubt about it. I think there's some advantages and disadvantages coming into a program and taking over a program. I think there might be some pluses in not being in the building when you're starting out,
Yes. Yeah.
because you do know kids and you have relationships in the community and all of those things. It makes it maybe some of those decisions are a little tougher when you're a first year coach
Sure.
than they
Sure.
might be if you don't know people. But beyond that, I think it's a definite advantage. I knew kids. My point guard, that first couple of years, she was to graduate 2013. Krista Showalter, one of the best leaders I've
Yeah.
ever coached.
Yep.
I had her in an advisory class for 4 years, so I already known her. We talked basketball all the time, even when I was in the boys' side anyway. So it was kind of nice to know those kids and kind of move in and have that relationship already started. We didn't have to start
Sure.
from scratch.
Sure. No, that seems like Christina Schumacher when I came in, and
Yeah,
again, I only coached her 1 year, you
right,
know, but she was so massive for that transition. She was my bridge to those young
right.
ladies, and to the point where it almost cost us our season. The first season, there was a little
Yeah,
bit of jealousy mixed in there, and here I'm trying to do the best that I can, trying to create relationships, and some of the girls felt like she was maybe stepping in on. It was just such an interesting dynamic that but yet it was so important for us to how are we going to take that next step forward because they'd gotten so close, and her number one goal is to make the state tournament. She was willing to do anything possible to make it
sure.
happen. And at the same time, you made a good point where I think they needed that separation because their previous coaches had all been in the building, and
Right,
so now all of a sudden here's a new set of eyes that probably don't know any of us,
right.
and maybe that helped that transition. So yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that and bring that up. Well, great stuff. I love the parallels, obviously coming from a couple different angles and approaches. One of the things that as I got to know you as a girls coach when you took over, and I'm interested to hear your um, answer or reply to this. But you had mentioned from Coach Walker, you don't always have to do things loud, and I know that I think as myself pretty loud, or
Right,
certainly can be, but I felt a comfort when you join the girls' side of the games because you can do things loudly without being personal or personally critical. But I think one of the things I don't know if you know Johnny Bartholomew at all. Do you know Johnny?
yeah, yeah.
he and I, when you first got hired, we wondered, because, you're coming from the boys program, and boys can tend to take really, abrasive's a tough word, but,
Tough
highly
coach.
just tough coaching. Sure. Let's go with that. And we'll allow it to, rub off their shoulders and go play. And we had always kind of wondered, as you made that transition to the rules game, how that would translate to not only, of course, the girls, but, people that see you for the first time, or
Right.
families that see you for the first time, or your community. What has allowed you to kind of continue your stuff? Now, I'm going to say, just from having watched you, you've gotten a little more tame over the years. I always internally tell you to go take a walk up and down the bench, and you've done that. You take those walks; those are important. But
Yeah.
what's allowed that to continue to be an effective tool, that to where maybe the girls don't take it personally, or your families and parents don't take it personally? Because I think as a coach, I always try to mix in. Girls want to be coached hard, and if that means I'm going to raise my voice, it's always going to be from a place that's certainly positive and constructive. And if it's ever personal, then that's when I got to get out of the game. If I ever
Sure.
make, and I make it a point, but that's where I think our parallels are really good, because we can be pointed and personal and loud, if you will. What's allowed you to continue to do that, and have a common understanding from the girls and maybe your community's perspective?
Well, that's an interesting question. I get it actually quite a bit. um, I have changed. Well, I don't know how to start this. First of all, when I came into coaching girls, I made a choice really not to coach them any differently than I coached boys, and there was a part of me. There's a little bit of an experiment. It's like, can I do this here?
Right.
Because it's as a coach, the only thing that you can do if you're going to do this well is to be yourself. You can't be somebody else. You can't try the guy that you follow. You can't be your mentor. You know what I mean? You just have to be yourself.
Sure.
And I'm super competitive, which can be a problem at times.
Sure.
And I just have this passion, and for me, it seems like basketball has always been the place where I can get that out when I was
Right.
playing, and then when I coach. And I know sometimes from the outside it looks a little rough, maybe, but I think for me, like you said, when I got the job, the girls were like, "Coach us, coach us,
Yeah.
coach us like you coach the boys." I mean, they didn't say that, but they wanted coaching. They didn't want to be treated differently. They're like, "We want to win, but we want to do it, kick our butts." And they gave me some permission to do that. And obviously, you have to. You can't just drill kids and be personal and critical and all those things. It doesn't work that way, or it doesn't work for very long anyway. I'll say that.
Sure.
And so for me, it always goes back to those relationships. I tell people all the time, I can't coach these kids unless they trust me the way I do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We have to have a relationship before they will, take tough coaching, I guess.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm going to say this. I've had tough kids. We have tough kids. Part of that is we try to develop toughness, and that's mental toughness and physical toughness. And that's part of the deal. What we do. And, I think people initially, probably when they saw me coach, were, up in the stands laughing, "Oh, this guy's crazy." But here's what I hope is that passion comes through. I'm not faking anything down there. It's what I do. I get into the game. You know how it is. It's Arlington versus Lake Stevens. It's a loud gym. I can hear you down there. You can hear me. It's what I love about it.
Yeah.
It's the excitement. It's the passion. It's the thing that, that makes it exciting for me and makes it worthwhile. And, it's worked for me. And you're constantly, if you're any good at anything, evaluating yourself and, finding ways to do things differently. Maybe you're better from year to year. And I've certainly calmed down as I've gotten older. And, I think maybe I realize that there's it's more effective if it's on less occasions than all the time. You know what I mean?
Right.
You don't want to get tuned out. And, so it's the girls always laugh and tell stories to me about how other players tell them, "I can't believe you can play for him. How can you do that?" And they're just like, "It's just Marsh. What are you talking about?" It's, so there's that.
I love it. No, I love it. I get the same thing too. Cause I can stomp.
Yeah.
I think that's my biggest thing, I think that's probably the biggest stories I get is, actually, I think this year at your place, we had gone through a series of just missed layups, and I think we had a chance to convert an and one to go up finally, and we miss a bunny, and it's me on film, and I throw down this biggest leg stomp, and it's all my body gestures that
Yeah.
gets me in trouble, but for giggles and kicks, of course. And
Oh, sure.
no, but ultimately, if you talk about our rivalry that we have, I think that's where our at least as in my perspective anyways, that's where I think our communities, our parents and families probably appreciate that game the most. If we're invested in it as coaches that much and our kids are invested in it that much, that's where they get to really enjoy us going head to head each and every year. You know what I
For
mean?
sure.
I mean, I think one of the things, and you're a local guy, so this is going to help. One of my biggest influences in coaching was Mike Lowry.
Yeah.
And obviously the Lowrys here in this area are highly revered, of course, in the history at Everett High School, and of course Mike at MP. And I was in middle school when the Palcoas and Easterbrooks and Shinnocks and that whole great run.
Right.
And so Mike, for me, and again, I was a terrible player, but his passion for the game and for kids, he was a highly emotional, could be demonstrative kind of guy, but it was always in a positive place.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of was what initially grew my interest in the game and wanting to coach it. He loved the game so much. He loved his kids so much, but you could tell his kids never took anything that he did personally. It was never on that kind of level.
Right.
And at the same time, he was able to separate himself off the court. And, and I think that was such a huge influence on how, like you had mentioned, kids want to get coached hard.
Right.
They want to know that you care and are after it. But you got to have to find that right mix and balance. And I always kind of find myself at times, like you said, you can't be on all the time and expect the same effectiveness. Sure. You certainly have to pick your spots, but it can be done. I think it's kind of the bottom line. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, for sure. And it is funny because, obviously high school basketball, groups change from year to year. You get,
yes.
I talk about this all the time with my coaches, my wife, it's like, you have to coach. I've gotten better at over the years coaching different groups differently.
Yeah.
I think when I first started out, I coached the way I wanted to coach and tried to do it that way. And which, there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but at some, you realize that, okay, different kids are going to handle things differently. And you got to be able to make that adjustment to, some groups don't respond the same, some groups aren't motivated the same way. And you got to find ways to push those buttons that aren't always that. But, for me, it's just, again, it's part of who I am. I don't really, I don't know how to turn it off. So I have to find a way to make it work.
Right. No, I love it. Such good stuff. Arlington basketball this year. What do you think about it? Give me a recap.
Outstanding year. I'm really proud of these kids and what our year this year. We had a good year last year. Ended up getting a game in Tacoma.
Mm-hmm.
We could finish in the top 8, so we were really happy with that. And with a bunch of sophomores and freshmen, basically. And we knew this year was going to be a good year, or we were hoping there was going to be a good year these next couple of years. And so, it managed to come together in a way that we're really happy with. We had some really tough competition early, great game against Lake Stevens in our gym. Took a tough loss in that one. Beat a really good Seattle Prep team, beat a, really tough Burlington team that trophied in the 2A.
Yep.
So it was just those, I think, and I'm not just saying this because we're here, that the loss to Lake Stevens was a tough one for us because, as you mentioned, I definitely consider it a rivalry. We circle that one every year because we know what's coming, and I think you guys know what's coming, and it's always going to be a battle.
Sure.
And I love that in the most positive way.
Sure.
And that was that loss was, it was a tough one for us. It was a great game. It's kind of, but we had taken a lead late, and you guys came back late with a great point guard, senior, who, tore us up in the fourth quarter, and we lost the game. And I think we all kind of took said, hey, we need to learn a lesson from this one. This game's not over because we're plus 10 with 4 minutes to go or whatever. You can't relax. Yes. And if you want to be good and you want to play great teams and great players and beat them, this can't happen. So that was really good for us. And we had a tough loss to Shorecrest early in December, late in December, right around Christmas break.
Yeah.
And another one where we were sick, and it was just one of those weird nights, and they beat us, and we played awful. And it was another kind of a check game where we had to, take a look and see what we needed to do. And then from there, we went on a roll. We just started winning games, and I think we won 18 straight going into the semifinal. So we really, I'm just proud of the growth of this team, just the maturity over the course of the season and how we really gelled as a team. Like you said, we had a really good talented freshman come in.
Yeah.
That can be a problem sometimes.
Sure.
Kids worried about time and who's playing and who's scoring and all that stuff that you have to manage. And I think that, our leadership on the team just did a really good job of welcoming her in. And,
Mm-hmm.
It's a sign of good teams when they don't care who it is, as long as they'll help you win. Then teams that can embrace that are going to do just fine. I know when they stay, Haley Hyatt Jr., great year this year. She's like, Marsh, I just want to win. She helps us win. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that's the attitude we need to have. She's a great kid. There doesn't need to be any of that stuff. So we did it. I think it was just a really, really great season for us. Again, our goal was to win a state championship. We thought, looking around, we had we were in top 3. We finished. We felt like we could play with just about anybody in the state. We run into a really tough Garfield team, and by the way, played Shorecrest in the district championship, and then again in the quarterfinal, which is never fun, playing the same team from the league. Squeaked that one out, and then run into a really tough Garfield team who just kind of physical, interesting. They got the 6'4" kid, and we're worried about her, and we do a great job on her.
Right.
And the FISO kid has a great game, and their guards, I think they just came together at the right time, and they kind of physicaled us. It was a physical game. It was good for us. It's tough to lose clearly in a semifinal on the big stage there. It was a hard one.
Yep.
And then you got to turn around and do it the next morning. And we had to play the number 1 seed Eastside Catholic, who had a great year. And so, I was really proud of the kids for being able to turn that, or how that is, trying to turn that around in less than 24 hours and go play in a trophy game that some people, I've seen teams, you've seen teams just kind of mailed in those morning consolation games.
Yep.
We did not treat it like that. Listen, we said we came here to win the big one. We couldn't get that one, so let's go get the next best one for us, which is 3rd place. And again, a great game against Eastside Catholic, back and forth the whole way. And I felt like we ended the season playing Arlington basketball the way we play, and get a 3rd place trophy. And it's hard to look back on that season and be disappointed. It's a great year all the way around. We're really, really happy with it. I'm really proud of the kids. So, yeah.
Right. Awesome. No, such good stuff. I think that, when you've got a program like that and you go on that kind of run, it's like one of those seasons you don't want to see end.
Right, for sure.
You know what I mean? You're in it and you feel like you're playing really, really good basketball and watching from afar. It seems like you guys certainly got on that path and just came out with some big wins there, certainly late. And you just want the opportunity at the end. You put yourself in that position at the end to have that chance. You got to get a little lucky. You got to have a couple things happen, and then as long as you're playing your best at the end of the year, you're going to feel pretty darn good about it one way or the other.
Yeah, well, I felt like we got into a groove. I kept my mantra late in the season was, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
The things that we've been doing, have made us successful. If we continue to do those things and get better at them, they're going to make us successful at the end. And that really was my deal this year is, hey, let's play great defense. Play the way we play. Let's do what we do. Obviously we got to shoot the ball and do what we do, on the offensive end. But I just felt like the kids were just locked in, and it's a really good feeling as a coach when the team is locked in like that and just wants to come out and win every night. And I have a really competitive kids and who have been looking forward to this for a long time and really wanted to win and really want to kind of prove themselves. We always have the little chip on our shoulder from Arlington where, especially when I first started, nobody even knew where we were, what's going on. And, we've had some success now, so people know who we are, but we still have that little chip on our shoulders, a little school up north, playing with the big girls. So we kind of use that to motivate us. And these kids are really motivated to go out and show what they were capable
of. Interesting you mentioned that, because I'm going to take this a step further. So when I took over Lake Stevens, and let me know if you had maybe the same thing, maybe your first state tournament experience or something of that sort with your teams. So when we first went down in 2005-06, we played like a Mount Tahoma group in Auburn Riverside. And at the time, we're just, I guess 4A, but little old Lake Stevens from the north. And we go down to play girls down there that, again, we feel like you have no business playing with. It was like almost like a mantra or perception we had to get over and say, hey, we can do this. Just because we're from somewhere that people don't know where we are from doesn't mean you can't play with them.
Right.
And so we were 2-done. I mean, it wasn't even about that. We played fine basketball wise, but it wasn't about basketball. We just
Right.
got so overwhelmed based because
Sure.
it was these Auburn Riverside, it was ranked #1, and Mount Tahoma was ranked 5. There was that perception that we had to get through. And it wasn't until we went and played in a couple Christmas tournaments down at Auburn Riverside to actually play those same teams, the Moses Lakes of the world, the Mount Tahomas, the Jesuits from Oregon, and so on and so forth,
Right.
where we had to kind of go play those teams to feel like, oh, hey, we can play that. Did you guys experience that maybe when you started to kind of go through your initial runs?
We did, yes. There's no doubt about it. I told my team this year, that's why that experience we had last year was so important for them because, it's hard to just go in and win in Tacoma. And most of the time you see the teams that have success maybe struggled the first year there or something like that.
Right.
Now, we had a weird circumstance, like I said, in 2013 where we just kind of went on this magical run. And I was fortunate to have a really strong senior class that year who just wanted to win. And we just kind of, and by the way, I'm going to have to give you and the Pacoa some credit, actually. I'm being serious here. So Krista Schulter, Lindsey Brown, they're my 2 top players that year.
Yep.
Had grown up playing against the Pacoas their entire lives and never beat them. I mean,
Wow.
really just routinely lost. They used to terrorize opponents everywhere they went.
Sure.
And in Westco as well.
Yeah.
And we got a win against you guys their senior year in our gym.
Yep.
Kind of went crazy that night, hit a bunch of threes.
Nuts.
And that really kind of propelled me like, okay, we can beat them. Now what else can we do?
Right.
Lost to a tough Linwood team. And then we went to, here we go. We end up, we end up losing to Linwood in the district title quite a few times. And then go to the regional game against Beamer that year. And nobody knows who we are. Beamer's like number 2 in the state, number 1 in the state, I think, whatever they were at the time. Nobody gave us a chance to win that game. Nobody.
Yep.
And we go in and shocked them. I know we did, and win that game. Kind of shocked ourselves.
Sure.
And like you said with Christina early on, these kids, all they want to do is go to the state tournament. They want to go to Tacoma. Winning anything wasn't even in our minds, really. I was just happy. Oh my God, we're going to state. This is awesome.
Right.
And then we walk in and we get Gonzaga Prep.
Yep.
And we shocked them. We ended up winning that game.
Yep.
And so we actually kind of went on this great run. It was even still to this day, when I look back on it, we just kind of shake our heads and go, nobody really expected it. And I think I knew we were pretty good. I didn't even know we were going to be that good. And then, we had that one of the best games all time versus Lake Stevens in a semifinal. I mean, it's just so it was a great year for us. So I had that more the next year when all those seniors graduated and I had a bunch of sophomores.
Sure.
So that's the year we ended up go play, we're playing those teams and we just weren't. We played a really good Moses Lake team and Inglewood. We were 2-out.
Sure.
And we've had a great season, but we're like, okay, we need to get better if we're going to compete at the top level here. There's things that we need to do better, every day in practice, how we prepare, all those things have to get better. And that's the great thing about Tacoma and getting to those games late in the season is you really find out, if the things you've been doing work and if you're good enough to compete because we call it BGB. That's big girl basketball now. And you have to be ready for that. So
that's nice. So you got to put your big girl pants on. We use that expression, BGB. Okay. I might steal that one. I like that a lot.
Big girl basketball. We use that for a lot of different things.
Love it. Now I happened to watch this year's game, the last 4 minutes. You want me to bring that up or?
Go ahead. You might as well.
So, oh man, I could go so many different directions with this. So we go up 10. I think you said like 4 minutes ago. I think it's right. We cut it to 8. And I think you call a timeout. You remember this moment?
I think so.
Cut it to 8. You call a timeout. What are you saying in that timeout?
They're making their run. And
okay.
Really, that's what it could. And we say this all the time. When you play good teams, great teams, they're going to make runs.
Right, for sure.
You have to be able to stop those runs. And by the way, I don't always call timeouts in those situations. And I go back and forth on this. My assistants get all over me. Are you going to call a timeout? Are you going to call a timeout? And I really do have a philosophy. I want kids to be able to play through some stuff.
Yes.
And sometimes it can cost you. There's no doubt about it. But
sure.
At that point, you can see the game shift. You know how it is. It's game shifting. We got to let's take a time out here and say, hey, let's get it together and get a bucket and take care of it on the defensive end. It's problem sure is what I'm saying. at that
Sure.
point.
Okay, so you take the timeout there. Well, just prior to that, I think early fourth, and you can tell me if I'm wrong because I muddle things up. I think it's maybe like 4 or 6 with maybe 6 or 7 minutes to go. So this is a little before that. Actually, probably is closer because you guys go on a run. Like we turn it over,
Right.
you make a few lefts, and you had just mentioned how there's sometimes circumstances where you're not calling a timeout.
Right.
Well, that moment when you guys go up 10, because now we have sophomores, you don't have freshmen that are playing these big time minutes.
Right.
My staff is going, "Hey, are you going to call a timeout? You're going to call a timeout?" And I'm like, "No, they're going to live and learn. This is game 2 for us on
Yes.
the year. We're going to live. If we're going to get beat by 20, we're going to learn getting beat by 20. And I'm not going to bail them out right now. And so we kind of absorbed it. Your place is going nuts. But they had to live and learn. Those are certainly moments that, and we've certainly felt like, and they're peeking over like, okay, coach, you're going to call this right here. And I don't look at them. It's kind of like one of those move on moments. But those things are really important. That's how your kids are going to learn to have to play in those circumstances and situations. And as we talk about, we're always trying to build them up for the end of the year and those moments anyways. You know what I mean? So did you say anything about shot selection late?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And by the way, I don't say much about shot selection, to be honest with you. We shoot,
Right.
we let it fly. And
Which is why I asked you the question, because I know you
so
guys
we attempted 42 threes in that game.
Yep.
Which is a record for us. I've never, that was a lot. And we didn't make as many as we should have probably, but obviously. But there's no doubt about it because, so I can tell you this, we're plus 10 with 4 minutes to go. This is kind of a little bit seared into my brain. And we go like 3 or 4 possessions where we shoot the ball with under 12 seconds.
We have a good shot clock view on our film, so that's why I asked you.
Normally, I don't have a problem with that.
Right.
In the regular part of the game. So this is why this game was so good for us, because they're like, okay. When have I ever told you not to shoot? And they're like, never. I'm like, well, because I don't. But you guys are old enough now. You got to start to figure out. We can't just come down, because if we miss, they're getting it and going the other. We're just.
It's run outs. It's run out opportunities.
Yes, run out, especially with Reagan. With the ball in her hands in the middle of the floor, she's dangerous. So yeah, that was for sure. After that game, we had some good conversations about time and score.
Love it.
How to, it's interesting. We had a couple games this summer. We played Glacier Peak and we were up 12 the whole game.
Yep.
They chip.
Remember that game well. Yeah.
Yep. Great game. They ended up beating us by 1 or something.
Yep.
We had a Kent Ridge game where we went up big and they came back. We had beaten them one time in a great win. They come back and they beat us. I said, okay. So for me going into the season, I'm like, we need to learn how to finish games if we're going to be, if you guys want, okay, here's our goals. You want to win a state championship, you want to go state, you want to do all those things. Now, how are we going to get there? And this is one of the things that we've identified for this team that we needed to be better at. We need to be able to finish games.
Sure.
And that was a great lesson for us in that game that in that loss to you guys early in the season. I think it was our 3rd game. And I was the same way. I was like, if we're going to lose this game, it's a non-league game in the first week of the season.
Yep.
It's not going to be the end of the year.
Right.
You know what I mean? Now,
sure.
Do I want to beat Lake Stevens? Yes. Do I want to beat Randy Egan's? Yes. All of those things, the rivalry. Yeah. But we took some good stuff from it. And actually, we learned. And that was, for me, it was great. It was funny because we had the ball 40 seconds.
Yep.
High game, I think. Yep. I call a timeout, and I run a play for my freshman.
Yes.
Takes it and scores.
Did she travel?
She may have. I don't know. I'm just going to go ahead and say no in that game.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, I've watched it a few times. I think she was fine, but I'm like, man, does she get a running start? But nonetheless.
So she gets a huge basket, and I stand up to call a timeout. I'm not really a after basket timeout guy. I know you do. I know Ken does it. And so I literally watch me on the film. I stand up to call a timeout, and you guys get the ball into Reagan over somebody's head, and she takes off on a streak immediately.
Yes.
And, of course, we're in trouble. She gets fouled again and goes to the free throw line. She was 10 for 10 from the free throw line in the 4th quarter or something like that.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting because as a coach, first week of the season, you're not on top of your game yet. I told the girls, I'm trying to try to get back into that rhythm. This is a high stakes game already, and and I was like, I needed to call that timeout. I needed to take off our press, which I didn't do. And, she got loose too much in that 4th quarter. And so we took a lot of lessons from that game.
Sure. Interesting. Cause I I don't know if maybe our film doesn't quite pan to the left there enough. So you were in the process of trying to call a timeout.
Well, I kind of stood up, and I remember the moment because I'm like, I should call a timeout here, but you just went, ding, and you got the ball in right away, which you
Okay,
had been doing all night.
sure. And so our biggest thing there, like you said, normally I think I would there. And maybe it was good Chloe got it in before I could even get it ahead of my own
Right.
self, to be perfectly honest. Because you look at the outlet, Reagan's at half court, and I'm like, normally I'm like, where the hell are you going right now?
Right.
You know? But again, it was so fast, and I think our kids, but because, the sporadic nature, it didn't allow you guys to get set. Reagan's going to put her head down.
Yep.
And, of course, the rest is history. But fun stuff. I know Dan had talked about, this kind of podcast, just kind of sidestep here, kind of talk about game scenarios and situations, with different coaches. So this stuff is fun to go through and kind of relive. I want to think that I'm not the only one that kind of replays those kind of things in my head all the time, but
Oh, believe me, I do it all the time.
sure. Now, to follow it up, do you watch old games?
My own film?
Yeah.
Yes.
And will you throw stuff in during the summer and just say, hey, gosh, I kind of want to watch this?
Oh, I do it all the time.
Okay.
I go back and watch film from years and years ago just to
Love
see.
it.
Just because, part of it is for fun. You want to relive some of those moments. And the other part is just to watch where we've come from. You know what I mean? What does it look like then versus now? And,
yes.
Kind of where, me as a coach, what we're doing. It's interesting to watch.
Yeah.
I love doing that in the summertime.
What I've found is I've looked at a few things. Shoot, geez, I watched, I think it was 2012, maybe 13, Go Girls, whatever. And I haven't seen them play, Lake Stevens basketball, obviously, in a really long time. But when you have great players, things are really simple.
Yes,
really simple. Less of us and more of them is always a good thing.
Absolutely.
Awesome. This is great stuff. So let's see what, as we move forward here, what's a typical Arlington practice look like, say in November compared to January, compared to March? Are you a skills guy all year long? Time frame wise, give coaches out there, if we were to walk into an Arlington practice, what are we going to expect?
Well, clearly differences between times of the season, no doubt about it. For us, shooting is a huge deal. If you come to any one of our practices, you're going to see a lot of shots get up. That's a thing that I've really, in the last couple of years, have done way more of. For me,
give us like a time frame. Is it like half?
So here we are. Let's go. Start a practice 3:00. Warm up, stretch. A couple minutes. Our first hour really is up and down and shooting, and almost for the rest of the year. And maybe that shortens up a little bit as the season goes on.
Sure.
But those are all full court layup drills, shooting drills. So that's our first hour is pretty much up and down.
So I'm going to jump in here. So that sounds pretty similar to us. I think there's not necessarily discipline running involved. Everything conditioning wise is drill related and shooting related.
Yeah. Early in the season, when you first do the tryout thing, we do some conditioning just to give kids the heads up and say, here's what you're here for and all of that. and actually to get in shape.
Sure.
So we run a lot. And, the way we play, we have to be in great condition. But it's very rarely do I say get on the line. Sometimes if somebody loses a drill, we'll do a little sprint.
Right.
We make everybody run. But it's so we try to do all of our conditioning in up and down in drills and with the ball in hand.
Yes.
Even if you're sprinting, put a ball, if you can dribble full speed, it's just it's better than just running. So
Love it. All right. So that first hour, drills and skills, lots of conditioning. What's next?
And then depending on how, where we are in the season, early in the season, we're going to break down our press for sure. So, and that starts out, in smaller, we build it up from, we do some trapping drills. We do some 2-on-2 to 4-on-4, and then, 5-on-5.
Sure. So,
and for us, we've been lucky the last couple years, and we do this anyway. We use our JV a lot in practice. We'll combine.
Yes.
And so, like, for instance, our JV kids get pressed by us every day.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we tell them, listen, you're not going to face this in any game that you see this year. So it'll make you better.
Yep.
Not going to feel very good sometimes, but it'll make you better. And, it's for us, it's just our style of play is such that you have to do it in practice. It's just that chaos element that we like and that we have to, get used to kids playing. And so we'll break down our press, so we do a lot of press work. And then, later on in the practice, we'll kind of slow it down. And that's when you're doing your shell,
Sure.
Shooting free throws, doing that sort of thing, breaking down some plays and all that.
Got it.
We put in dribble drive a couple of years ago, and all the blood drills from Wahlberg, we love.
Yep.
They take up a big chunk of our practice because of just what they've done for us, not only for putting in the offense and kids figuring out what to do in the offense, but just basketball wise. It's playing basketball. And I'm more of a 5-on-5 guy, to be honest with you.
Yep.
I see the game better that way, and we do drills, obviously we're doing stuff, but for me, that's been a big plus for us. So break down pressure and then kind of slow it down at the end and kind of do the, finer teaching points.
Sure.
Especially earlier in the season, you're going over your defense, what you're looking for. Our pressure takes a lot of time for us just to get kids used to it and, try to make reads and not overthink it. You know what I mean? And so that takes up a lot of time for us. And by the way, it's great for us because we get a lot of conditioning in that way as well.
Right.
So,
awesome.
And as the season goes on, it just gets shorter. It's really what happens.
Same idea, but just condensed time frame.
For the most part, yes. By the time we get to March, we're going an hour, if tops. We're doing our warm-up stuff. We're getting some shots up. We're shooting for free throws. We're reviewing what we, hey, what do we need to go over to run to make sure you guys know it? And, depending on who we're playing and what's going on, do some, opponent stuff as well. And we do more of that late in the season than we do early on. We try to focus on us most of the time. Now, obviously, when you get to postseason, you have to do some scouting and some preparation. But, during the season, we try to just kind of work on what we do.
So have you had seasons where you've run into dead legs in January?
Absolutely. We, year 3, I believe, it's that year we went 2-out. So we had gone to the state champ. We got second the year before, a bunch of sophomores.
Yes.
And I played my starters, probably 5 kids playing 25 minutes a game.
Yeah.
And I realized after that season that I played them way too much.
Yep.
And their legs by the time we got to Tacoma were just dead, and and that was on me.
Sure.
You know what I mean? That's one of the reasons, to be honest with you, then, we try to really develop depth.
Yep.
Especially the way we play, and we kind of made the transition that year to pressing full time.
Yep.
The next couple years after that, or that year, was really kind of made the shift. So I knew if we were going to be able to do that, we'd have to develop some depth because, those kids, I tried to kill them that year. Now, they didn't want to come out of the game, but, it takes a toll.
Yeah, no doubt. No, it's kind of where I was going with that. I would imagine, especially if you don't have necessarily the bench that you would like to have, and you're leaning on those kids so much, there's got to be at some point in the season where they're just really struggling to get any lift, knock shots down, that kind of thing with consistency. And depth's going to be important for sure. Awesome. Let's see. Are you a big statistics guy, analytics guy?
Well, I don't know about big. We do the huddle assist thing, which I love.
Yes, fantastic.
It's been the best thing that we've done the last couple of years, obviously, because I don't say I go crazy over stats, but you do have to look at them. And shooting percentages are big for me. There's things that you have to look at, obviously, and take a look at. And so since we've done that, our stats are obviously way better and not perfect, but way better. And I love just being able to see. We'll do checkpoints during the season, with kids.
Sure.
We try to. So yes, it's been probably more in the last few years. I've really kind of gotten using stats more. Although I still don't. I'm kind of old school in some ways too. It's I don't want to get over. I want to watch the basketball game, not just the paper and what it looks like.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Well, and shoot, huddle assist has so much.
Oh yeah, so much. Yes.
So which is good. It's nice to have it at your disposal, but you certainly got to slim down what are in the best interest of your program and so on and so forth. You mentioned shooting percentages. Well, if you're shooting lots of threes, which you guys do, it's kind of part of your system and what you do. Is there a target number you're consistently looking for?
Well, we shot about 32% this year, I think, which is not bad.
From 3?
Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously you can get to that 33%. You're shooting 50%.
Right.
And that is great. I think I'm more of a volume shooter guy than percentages, to be honest with you. I will with certain kids, you look at kids' percentages. And
Yep.
again, my philosophy is we're going to shoot the ball. You need to shoot it. If you're open, you shoot it.
Yep.
You're going to hear about more from me not shooting than shooting.
Sure.
Now, and most kids figure out if they're the ones supposed to be taking that shot in that moment for the most part. But we don't really, especially until we get late in the fourth quarter or something, we don't really care who shoots it.
Yeah.
So the percentages for me especially in the 3-point line, don't really matter too much. Obviously, there's games and nights and if it was awful, you might have to think about making a change. But I'm more about volume on that. Free throw percentage is huge for me because we've had years where we just struggled shooting free throws. I'm always just keeping an eye on that. We argue every day in practice. My assistants want me to shoot more free throws. I'm like, do you shoot it? Is it a waste of time? So, we keep an eye on that. But shooting percentage, unless if a kid's really struggling, we'll take a look and say, hey, okay, this is your number here.
Yeah.
It's funny. I had to have a conversation with my point guard this season, who happens to be my daughter as well, who had a great year. His first team all-league kid, kind of really had a breakout year for us, and shoots a lot of threes. and she finds ways to get shots up, and she gets good shots, but her percentages for a while were rough. So I was like, you need to think about doing some other things here. Not that she wasn't doing other things, but, maybe taking that shot right there is not the one, and maybe a one more on that one, and be a little more selective.
Sure.
We can get that percentage up, and then we'll talk some more. So it's things like that.
Yeah. No, you talk to kids all the time. I think our general rule of thumb is if you've missed a couple from distance,
sure,
get to the rim, get to the free throw line, see something go through the hoop,
right,
and then you can come back to that and what have you. Just a reminder, I saw the shot she took that went behind the basket to start the year. So.
She's never going to hear the end of that.
Hey, but look what she parlayed it into.
Yes.
All was good, and had a fantastic season, all that kind of good stuff. Man, I'm glad you mentioned this. So I've obviously this wasn't even on my question list, but now I get to go that route. So I just got to start coaching my daughter, at the high school level and so on and so forth. And have really enjoyed it. It's such a surreal thing. You finally get to this point, you get to coach your own kid, and special, there's no doubt. And at the same time, there's probably a little bit of a balance too, in terms of, her teammates and kind of what's appropriate.
Sure.
Speak about your experience about having your own daughter in your own program.
Well, it's been interesting. I've enjoyed it. I love it. I mean, like you said, there's a lot of great things that go with it.
Yeah.
I was definitely cautious coming in, so I've not coached Kira like on a team growing up. I stayed out of it.
Yes.
I sometimes think, well, maybe I should have done it earlier, but so I stayed out. I mean, I was at everything. I was there,
right,
and I coached her all the time when she wasn't on the court, but I didn't officially coach her until she got to high school. So that was kind of nice.
Yeah.
She wasn't tired of me already by the time she got to high school. I don't think.
Right.
But trying to break her, get in with the program, and I'm fortunate she's good. And, I've been telling her for years, Dad, I want to play for you. I want to play varsity basketball. Okay, well, here's what that's going to look like. Yeah. And you're going to have to earn everything that you get. I'm not giving you anything. In fact, the girls give me a hard time because I give her such a hard time in practice.
Sure.
And so, but she's been great. She's dealt with it really well. We have a weird situation because my brother's my assistant coach, who's her uncle.
Yeah.
So she's got to hear it from, she's got to hear it at the family barbecue and on the court. And so so it's actually worked out really well. I love it. I think I have to back off when the season's over sometimes and just kind of step back. I'm learning how to do that. I'm not very good at it.
Yeah.
Times she's like, Dad, I don't want to talk about basketball right now. Or you don't need to coach me right now. You know what I mean? So, but other than that, it's been nothing but positive. And the kids have been great. And, for me, I guess the biggest thing is she earned everything that she got. I didn't have to do it. There was nothing. She decided at one point she's a varsity player and she showed it. And that's what she did. So it's always a little cautious coming in and making that, especially if your kid's going from JV to varsity or whatever the scenario is with their talent level,
right.
I was probably more cautious than I would have been.
Sure.
It was with just a normal kid.
Yeah. No, I think that was probably my experience this year too. She probably deserved it a little earlier than probably I gave the opportunity to. But I think one of the things that I made mention of early is because she was getting a lot of you probably already know what teams are, da da da.
Right. Oh yeah.
And we addressed that from the jump. I think it was like day 3 practice, and I said, I know Ella's in our program, but she's not in tune with
Right.
what we're doing or talking about as coaches or what have you. So you need to exclude her from that. You know, if she's not going to be that bridge to
Right.
information, I'm not going to put her in that tough position.
Right.
She's going to be a player, you know, and that's it. And that's how and you need to treat her as a teammate and so on and so forth. We'll worry about, coach, daughter related and that kind of thing. But she needs to be just like you guys.
Yeah.
And it's worked out well. The girls accepted her, but certainly a pretty fun thing to have. And I would say with Ella, I think I coached her maybe 4th grade, 5th grade.
Yeah.
But same approach, like you had mentioned. I just didn't really want any part of that. I wanted her to have her own experience. And for that matter, I didn't want her coaches to know that I was a coach. I mean, I knew that was harder as she got
Sure.
older. But I don't want them to think I'm overlooking their
Right.
shoulder. Just, hey, as long as my kid's having fun and
For
playing,
sure.
and then have at it.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's, and maybe you can speak the same way, but I think that's why she loves it, is she had such a good experience and didn't have to worry about dad being on top of her when she was growing up with it, that, as you had mentioned with Kier, they were so hungry to be a varsity basketball player. Man, I
Right.
want to play Lake Stevens basketball. I want to play Arlington basketball. So
Right.
such good stuff. Just a couple more questions, and then we'll let you scoot. Um, how do you extend your learning as a coach? What are some things that you look into or
Oh,
pursue? Or
I'm a junkie. I'm always looking and reading and watching. Um,
sure,
this coaching clinic that they put on here in March and April after the season, the free all the Zoom meetings.
yeah, Blason Perkins, I think, put that out there.
Yes, it's a
Good enough.
treasure trove of just stuff,
Cool.
and so I've watched quite a few of those. Just to I think when you get to a certain point, I feel pretty secure in what I know and what we're doing.
Yep.
But you're always looking for little things that you can tweak and ways to make practice better. Maybe a great drill here, great shooting drill that we could put in or something like that.
Yep.
I'm always interested to see what teams do defensively, kind of, and so a lot of that, read. But yeah, it's just a lot of looking. I used to be, when I first started coaching, I spent, my wife will tell you I still do, but just a ton of time researching anything that I could about offense, defense, offense, defense.
Yeah.
You're
Yep.
always searching for the magic bullet until you finally realize that you gotta, teach kids something, and it's gonna, there's a lot of different ways to do it.
Yes.
So I just try to stay in touch with what's going on in the world, basketball, at all levels, NBA, WNBA, college,
Yep.
women's college basketball. I love to watch just to see what people are doing and the trends, and
Yes.
just trying to stay in tune with what's going on, and, do a lot of just kind of, we put in the dribble dive, like I said, bought another video this spring just to kind of take a look at some stuff and get better at it. So things like that.
Awesome. Love it. Last one. Obviously we had talked about before we started with the episode here about, our goal with this, podcast or whatever we want to call it with, just kind of this media is to try to help encourage young coaches to stay in the game and especially on the girl side of things, we want to see some consistency there. And especially with our young coaches that have had a lot of success. We've actually had quite a few this year that had quite a bit of success. Jeff over at Lake Washington and the run that they
Yep.
made and so on and so forth. Christina, out at Englemoore has done
Yep.
such a great job, taking over there. You got to keep coaches like that in the game,
Absolutely.
to see girls hoops, have success. With where you are in your career, there have been some things that you've done differently. What's some advice that you have for young coaches, just getting started or a few years in that you'd like to extend or maybe even take it from the angle if you could have done something differently or change something early on? What would you have done, do you think?
What would I have done differently? That's a tough question. I think when you get a head coaching job, it's the old cliche, you just move one seat over, but it's the,
Still
jumping.
Mike Neighbors' philosophy, 12
Right.
inches, things change so much.
Yes. So you're kind of overwhelmed with everything at that point. And
Yeah.
I think for me, and I don't know if there's any way around that, to be honest with you. I really
Yes.
don't. You have to just jump in with both feet and do it, especially
Yep.
that first year. You just have to, hopefully you can surround yourself with good people. So, I mean, I would say that for sure. Make sure you surround yourself with good people on your staff, people you can
Yep.
trust, people who have the same mission, are on the same page as you. I just think that's huge. So, and I think, like I was talking about, searching for the greatest offense, greatest defense stuff. You get over that real quick and you realize that there's way more important things than that.
Yes.
And that's really not what's going to make you better. And for me, it always goes back to a couple things is the relationships that we're talking about.
Yep.
It's the most important part.
Yep.
It's just, for me, the joy that I love coaching the game and I love the competitive piece and all of that, but those kids, now those kids who are 25, 28, having babies and getting married and doing all those things and still staying in touch with those kids is the best part of it.
Yep, for
so
sure.
I would encourage any young coach to just focus on those relationships. The basketball will come from that. There's no doubt about it. Again, there's a million ways to coach basketball in lots of different ways and lots of successful ways. Find the one that fits you and go with it. And I think that's, for me, has been the biggest thing for me, is just believing in what I do and continuing to do that. I think culture is paramount. I mean, I tell this to anybody who asks, and it's the buzzword these days. I get that, and everybody's talking about it. And I think there's a lot of talk and sometimes not a lot of action in that area. I think the best thing that you can do is build that culture. And for me, I'll never forget this. When I had the interview for my job, I was in high school when the Arlington Girls won the only state championship. I think it was a sophomore in high school. So I had some friends on the team, and we watched that whole thing. It was fun. And I remember just being super exciting, and the gym was packed, and people were watching girls play, and not even thinking of when I interviewed, I'm like, I want that again. I want to bring that in this gym, because it was I know for me as a sophomore in high school, it was a great experience, just to watch and be a part of. And so I think just having a vision of what you really want, and then you got to, what are the steps you're going to take to make that vision real? And I think if the focus is on those things and those relationships, and then you'll find a way to have success with basketball. Obviously talent is, comes and goes. There's not much you can do about that. You can develop the talent that you have. For me, the culture is the biggest thing. I think that I'm really proud of the identity we have. Identity is a thing for me. I mean, I think you put a stamp on your program.
Yep.
If I ask you, what do you think of Arlington basketball? Or some stranger comes in and says, Randy, what do you think of Arlington basketball? What would you say? And if they ask me about you, I have an answer. You know what I mean? About your program and about you. And there's some people I would not have an answer. I don't know. What do they do? I don't know. For me, it's really important to have an identity. And part of that is, the pressure thing, that the press that we do and the way we shoot is part of that. And I'm not just throwing that out there to have an identity, but it's a part of what we do, and it's really important. And we've had some success at it. So I just think all of those things. I know I'm rambling here, but stop me if you have any more questions. But youth programs, I just want to touch on that.
Yeah, for sure.
My first year, there was no youth program. We got it started my second year, and it's made a huge difference. Huge. There's no way you can be successful anymore without it, I don't think.
Sure.
So I know there's places that struggle and places that don't have that youth program. I would encourage any coach when they start out is to get in touch with the youth program.
Yep.
If there's not one, get it going. Sure. Even if it's just ragtag to start, it'll grow.
Yep.
And I think it's made a big difference in just the community for us.
For sure.
Arlington, you know how Arlington is. Small towns feel still, even though it's not quite what it used to be.
Sure.
Those little girls grow up, coming to our camps, looking up to these girls, coming to our games. And I just think that helps build that tradition that carries on from year to year. So when those girls step in their ninth grade year, they know what they're getting into, and they've been waiting for it. And I'll take some pride in this for sure. And the kids that I've had have done an excellent job, the seniors, of passing that stuff down. To me,
cool.
I can lecture all I want on it. When they come in and they see kids living it, we talk about family basketball. What is that? That's great. That looks great on a packet that you hand out. What does that really mean in reality? You know what I mean? What does it mean in the locker room? What does it mean when times get hard? And if they see those kids trying to do their best at it, and trying to live up to those things, you're not going to be perfect. That really makes an impact. And for me, I think, it's weird when you think about it. The basketball is almost secondary to that stuff in some ways. But when you combine those factors, then you get, I think, a recipe for success. And then, I'll let you, I think the other part of this is you have to define what success is for you.
Yep.
What does that mean? Right now we're super talented. We got third in state. We're bringing the whole team back. We're trying to win a state championship. I'm very fortunate. There's plenty of places where that's not happening. And I've had those years as well. So you have to be able to define success for yourself and be able to live with it. You know what I mean? It can't just be your win-loss record, because there's going to be years, there's nothing you can do about that. You know this. Sometimes you do
Yep,
your best coaching in the years and your worst
for
teams.
sure. Yeah,
And
no, for sure.
sometimes there's just not much you can do except for do the best that you can. So I think, those are the things that come to mind if you're asking me those questions
Yeah,
about, and it adds to longevity. I don't want to go. I'm happy. I love my job. I love
yep,
this program. I put everything I have into it, building a thing, I think, and I don't want it to go away. I want this to continue. And someday
sure.
I'll step away. I don't know when that is. I have no plans for that anytime soon. But when I do, I want somebody to be able to step in into a good thing, and
Yep,
have that. And I'm an Arlington guy. I went to high school here, so I have that love of that thing that
sure.
you know, no matter what, when you're at a school for a certain period of time, you develop that thing anyway, especially when you teach there too.
Yep.
So yeah, so that's where I'm coming from.
Awesome. No, it's so good, and as we've mentioned a couple times here today, it's one of those things that if you have those principles in place, things that identify what your program's all about in
Sure.
place, the basketball side of things is going to take care of itself.
Yep.
And that's what you want. You want your kids to own that. There's that ownership that they get to take on, and
Absolutely.
you get to be a part of it instead of necessarily having to lead it. They're gonna be the group that drives what that looks like moving forward. And as long as you have those components in place and those are priorities and make up what your family's all about, then that's where you're gonna have that success. The basketball side of things is gonna follow in suit. So awesome. Well, hey, I appreciate so much your time. This is fantastic stuff. I've always had a ton of respect for you and what you've done there, and the feeling's always been mutual in terms of our competitive nature and how we go about kids. And I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Randy. Great to talk to you. I love this. This is great. I could do this a lot.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And again, the same thing. I think one of the I'll just end with this. I love the fact that my girls see me talking to you. Man, why are you talking to him? You get that sometimes. Like, you know what I mean?
Yes,
Aren't we trying to beat
yes,
him? You've been telling
yes,
us all week we're trying to beat them. Yes, but you know what? I respect him. He's a good coach. He's a good guy. We have a life outside of this little rivalry here. The rivalry's great, and it makes
yes,
this thing exciting. Doesn't mean we have to hate each other. You know what I
yes,
mean? And I
yes.
to me, that's one of the best parts about coaching as well, is having that respect and that camaraderie. Even though you know that I'm going to try and kick your butt and do everything I can that night, and and
Yeah,
I know full well coming in that you're going to do the same, and you're going to have your kids ready to go, and that makes it even better.
yeah. No, I would say the same. I get the same thing. Why are you talking to him right now? And we get the same answer. I'm like, well, why do we play them as much as we possibly can? Because they do things that we don't see with other teams, or when we do, it's going to be at junctures that we need to see them, and and it's been fantastic. So I've always appreciated it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.